When it comes to shooting highly glossy and reflective products like these, it's incredibly difficult even for professional product photographers. Now, to overcome the problems of the dark reflections and the high contrast, we use something called gradient lighting to create that lovely, luxurious look to these products. In these examples, you can see how I've made these products look wonderful with these beautiful, smooth, silky tones of light transitioning across the surface of the products. And it's used for all various types of high gloss products, from high gloss plastics, cosmetics, jewelry. Various glossy luxury products are often photographed using gradient lighting. However, using gradient lighting requires some professional knowledge and professional skill. Well, that was until now, where I've designed the light cone. Now, the light cone overcomes many of the problems of shooting high gloss products. Now, in professional photography in the studio, we use very large scrims and diffusion material to overcome these problems. And whilst those are suitable for many types of product photography, they can be a bit unwieldy to use for most photographers that don't necessarily have the space. Also, there are many products that are more spherical in shape that even large scrims don't work very well for. And that's exactly why I designed the light cone to overcome these problems. Let's take a look a little bit further. Now, if we take the product that I've got under here at the moment, which is this highly polished chrome shower head, you can see how it's reflecting all of these dark surfaces. It's reflecting the high contrast lights that you can see in there, and the product just generally looks terrible. But if I put the light cone in, you'll see how that product is improved dramatically with the look of the lighting and the luxury feel of the lighting. Now, that's created by something called diffusion, and the diffusion of a point light source to create gradations. Now, many photographers may say, well, why don't you just use a softbox? Well, softboxes can be wonderful for many types of photography, including beauty, portraiture, and some matte surface products. But softboxes aren't really suited to glossy products because a softbox is an homogeneous light source. That means that it's even in exposure from corner to corner and in the center. And that creates a uniform patch of light on the glossy surface, and then that uniform patch of light finishes very abruptly and goes from a white stripe to a dark stripe, which also doesn't suit most product images. When we think about shiny products and glossy surface products, what you have to realize is that they're actually a mirror forming an image of the surroundings. So if you were photographing a kettle, for example, what you're seeing in the kettle is just like a spherical mirror, and it's reflecting all elements of the studio from all directions, all elements of your lighting from all directions, and it becomes very, very difficult to photograph. So what we need to do is we need to overcome those reflections by blocking them with a more suitable light source. And that's exactly where the light cone comes in. Now, I designed the light cone with very special optical density properties and exactly the right material to give the perfect gradations for studio lighting. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you some examples of how we control those gradations with the light cone. So what I'm going to do is just take a photograph, first of all, without the light cone here. And then I'm going to take one with the light cone. And then we're going to move on now. I'm going to put this into video mode, and then we're going to run the video while I show you what happens with the gradation lighting and how it's controlled. Now, we have 3 lights at the moment around here. These are studio flash lights. That means that they will fire a burst of flash, which comes out of the flash tube internally here. And of course, with that type of lighting that most studio photographers are familiar with, it means we can control the power independently of each light. But I've just got the modeling lights on at the moment so we can see what's happening. And if we look at the video image, we can see when I turn that light off, you can see that this light at the back here, you can see it's creating that gradient and stripe down the shaft of the shower head. And if I move that light around manually, you can see how I can change the position of that gradient. Now that gradient is only a very thin slither of light because of where it's hitting and where I've placed it. This next light is controlling quite a lot of lighting, over the top of the shower head and creating that beautiful gradient along that top edge there. So you can see as I move it, how I'm catching that. Now, at the moment, this light is at quite a low level. If I raise it up higher, you'll see that gradient move over into the face of the product. And if I move it around, you can see it moving into different positions. So it's the position of the light relative to the light cone that controls and creates the necessary gradients. And one thing that's great, especially if you're using a mirrorless camera or live view, is that you can see all this happening live and you can move your lights around until you get the desired effect. Now, one of the main lights in action here, which is creating that beautiful gradient in the center of the shower head, is this one. And if I turn that one on and off, you can see the effect that one is having. And this is where I can demonstrate gradient lighting more effectively, because if I move the light in much closer, we get more of a harder spot of light. Now the exposure's increased slightly there in doing that, so I'm just going to modify that exposure just to show you a little bit better here. So you can see that harder light because I've gone closer to the light cone, but as I pull the light away, it will become softer, because from the subject's perspective, the light actually grows in size. Now that may sound a little bit counterintuitive to most photographers, because as you know, as a photographer, when you move a light further away, it becomes smaller to the subject and becomes harder and more contrasty. But when we're using scrims and gradient devices like this light cone, as we move the light further away, the actual spread of light becomes larger. So internally, from the subject's perspective, the light looks larger and therefore softer. And when we move the light closer with this type of diffusion material, then internally, from the subject's perspective, the light looks smaller and higher contrast. And as you can see on the video right now, I've got an amazing amount of control with my gradients by simply moving the light around or changing its distance relative to the subject. But gradient lighting requires specialist property materials. This type of gradient lighting requires exactly the right optical density to create those beautiful gradients from the subject's perspective. And with the light cone, I've designed this specially with this particular material, which is also heat resistant, to give those perfect gradients that I've used for decades now in my product photography. And you will find that this product makes taking photographs of these type of subjects a piece of cake. So if you'd like to achieve perfect gradients in your product images, check out the Karl Taylor light cone.